What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by your favorite beat reporter, Chris Fedor. And Chris is coming to you back from Las Vegas. He's back in the hometown. And Chris, I know we usually start this podcast off with news or information, but we also know that we have to get into your top spots from where you got to eat in Las Vegas, food-wise. So, Chris, lay it on us. What did you have to eat while in the West Coast?
You know what they say, Ethan. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. No, I'm kidding. Man, where didn't I eat when I was in Vegas? So during the afternoon of game days, I just went very close to where the arena is on the campus of UNLV, and I had In-N-Out before both games that the Cavs played. So that was Friday and Sunday, a lunch of In-N-Out. It was delicious. It was exactly what I needed to get me through those games, some of them harder to watch than others. And then a couple dinner spots. Let's see. My final night there was a gathering of a lot of different NBA media types. We went to the Caesars buffet together. Shout out to Nate Duncan of the Dunked On Pod. He had a bunch of us. It's a yearly tradition. It's one of the final nights that we're there in Las Vegas. We all gather together. There's 8 to 10 of us. We just talk hoops, we talk life, and we go to the Caesars buffet, which is, it is to die for. So you just got to bring your appetite. And it's always hilarious to see who's going to be the last person eating at the buffet, like real buffet food, before they actually get to the dessert. I can't remember who it was this year, but it was a surprising. Usually it's Nate. Nate saves himself throughout the course of the day. Like, he preps his body, he preps his mind to have the kind of buffet that you would want to have, paying the kind of money that you do for that buffet. So that was the final night there. It was wonderful. I had prime rib, I had flank steak, I had chicken wings, I had green beans, mashed potatoes, I had a lamb chop for the first time in my life. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is in that. And the great thing about the Caesars buffet, if you've never had the Caesars buffet, Ethan, it is set up in like cuisine. So tucked away in the corner is the Italian spot with the meatballs, the pastas, all the different breads that you would want. Then there's like a little sandwich area if you want that. Then there's a carving station for meat. Then there's a carving station for chicken and turkey. Then there's a seafood section over there. Then there's a Chinese food section over there. Then there's a Japanese food section over there. So it's just, oh my God, it's unbelievably good. And it's almost overwhelming, the kind of options that you have there, because you're like, what am I going to get, number one? And how am I going to fit this all on my plate? So I think I had 4 plates. I started with the prime rib and the mashed potatoes and the green beans. And then I kind of just ventured around the world, as I like to call it, because the cuisine is set up that kind of way. So it was wonderful, and it was a good time had by all. What else did I do? Oh, I went to Ramsay's Kitchen. Chef Gordon Ramsay. He's got multiple spots in Las Vegas. I decided one night that I was going to splurge, and I went to Ramsay's Kitchen before taking in a show. So it was right there at Harrah's to begin with. So I figured, okay, let's just get a dinner reservation where the show is going to be, and I can take my time. Oh my God. Ramsay's Kitchen. Prices were obnoxious. Service was fantastic. The food was to die for. He is known for his beef Wellington. And that is the thing that he has been known for a number of years. It was on the TV shows and stuff like that. And that's what they're known for at that restaurant. And it was incredibly good. So that was another night. One of the nights, Jason Lloyd of The Athletic, my buddy, him and I went to a fancy steakhouse. That was wonderful. That was Friday night after the game. I forget the name of that one, but it was inside the Luxor. So That was wonderful. And what else did I have? Oh, Grimaldi's. Duh. There's a pizza place that is, New York famous. It's called Grimaldi's. It's in the Dumbo area of New York. And they also have one in one of the main buildings in Vegas. It's either the Venetian. It's not the Bellagio. I think it's the Venetian. So there is a Grimaldi's in Las Vegas, and I make sure every time that I go to Vegas, because it's during the summer, and I have to wait for Grimaldi's until we go to New York or until we go to Brooklyn. So I made sure that I got Grimaldi's too while I was there. I think that was it. There was a Johnny Rockets inside my resort. That wasn't happening. There was like a Baja Taco or something like that, Baja Mexican place inside my resort. That wasn't happening. I don't think I had a single meal inside the resort where I actually stayed. I went to the other ones. And then the last meal I had, Eataly. Eataly is a big deal. I love Eataly. There's one of those in Chicago by one of the hotels where I stay near Magnificent Mile. So they have an Eataly in Las Vegas too. And one of the few times that I actually ventured outside my resort and outside one of the buildings and walked around Vegas because it was obnoxiously hot. I went to Eataly, and that was a fantastic meal because it's always a fantastic meal. I think that's it. I think that's all I ate. I was a lot, but it was awesome. as good of a spread as I could create in 4 nights in Las Vegas.
For the people who don't watch the show on YouTube, Chris began salivating when talking about this food, enjoying himself to the T. And Chris has mentioned on this podcast multiple times, if Chris has the opportunity to go back and get more plates, Chris is going to go back and get more plates. So when he mentioned a competition or trying to see who was going to be the last person eating at the buffet, my vote automatically went to Chris. But did I also hear that you said that you have never had a pork chop before you went to Vegas this last go around?
No, lamb chop. Did I say
lamb
pork
chop?
I think I said lamb chop. I'm pretty sure.
I think you said lamb chop. Lamb chop. You have never had a lamb chop before?
No.
What?
Because where am I going to go that has lamb chop on the menu that is going to be cooked well enough for me to enjoy it the way that it probably should be enjoyed or is enjoyed by other people that really like lamb chops? Like, I'm not chartering a cruise in the Mediterranean or something like that where I've got a 5-star chef cooking up for me. I'm not Darius Garland or Tristan Thompson that just has a chef in their house in Bracknell. Like, come on now. I'm just a guy who sometimes goes to Outback Steakhouse, sometimes goes to Cheesecake Factory. If I want to get a little bit more fancy than that, I'll rock, Hyde Park, Bonefish, something along those lines. No, there are other ones, obviously. But if I go to those places, Ethan, I don't want to sell myself short, but if I go to those places, I want a fancy steak. I want a filet. I want a ribeye. I want something that they can do really, really well, better than I can do it myself. So if I have a choice between lamb chop or filet, lamb chop, ribeye, I'm always going to take the steak because I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy. I'm a steak and potatoes kind of guy specifically. So I was at a buffet and I was like, might as well try something that I wouldn't order for myself, right? And if I don't like it, I'll just push it to the center of the table and they'll come and they'll grab it, right? That's the greatest thing about the buffet is that you try all these different things and there's no shame if you don't actually eat it or if you don't like it because everybody else that is seated in the buffet seating section, they're just like you. They have some things that they're not going to eat. They have some plates that are sitting in the middle of the table with food and scraps and stuff like that. So I tried it for the first time, and I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. I don't think it's anything that I'm going to go to a restaurant specifically for moving forward. But I thought it was good, and I felt proud of myself that I tried something new at this age, where you're probably kind of set in your ways at this point in time. And for people that don't know me, I don't really have the most expansive palate. I like what I like, and I order what I like, and when I do like that food, I eat lots of it. lots of it in one sitting. Like the steakhouse that Jason Lloyd and I went to, we both got the 18-ounce bone-in ribeye, and so, man, afterward we were just plopped there. It was so much food. But if I like the food, I'm going to eat lots of it. But I don't really change up what I eat, right? And I don't really expand at this stage of my life. But I did try a lamb chop, and I was very proud of myself because of that. And it was fine. It was good.
Old dog, new tricks, something to write home about. But I mean, I wasn't expecting you to try lamb chops in Cleveland. Like, you travel all the time. I was like, Memphis, Atlanta, New Orleans, maybe those three would be the places I'd be like, maybe he's had a lamb chop at these spots before. But you are a steak and potatoes guy. I did not take that into consideration. You would much rather have a steak which you are familiar with and know you will enjoy rather than something that was new. But that's fair. But for what the Cavs fans are here for, other than the food recommendations that Chris indulges in every time he goes on a trip, Chris, you got to talk to a lot of different people at Summer League. What was the most memorable story that you had from an interaction? Because based on what you told our subtexters, it felt like, or it seemed like, you got fended off by security while trying to have some conversations while in Las Vegas. So maybe dive into those and who you got to talk to and what those conversations were about.
So the Cavs were in the small gym on the campus of UNLV. There are two gyms. There's Thomas and Mack Center, which is the big one where UNLV plays, and then there's Cox Pavilion, which is the smaller one, basically right next door. I think they put the Cavs there because there really isn't that standout player that they brought to Summer League. I don't think people are flocking to Cox Pavilion to watch Monty Bates. I don't think they're really flocking to Cox Pavilion to see Jaylen Tyson. He was the 20th pick in this draft. He wasn't a top 5 pick. So the bigger gym is reserved for Reed Shepherd and Alex Sarr and some of the more notable guys, Bronny James, Dalton Connect, and the Los Angeles Lakers. But the Cavs, they didn't bring the most showy team to Las Vegas, let's say, the most appealing team, the most eye-catching team to Las Vegas. So they just sent them into the small gym in Cox Pavilion. And it gets kind of chaotic in there. Because it's very, very crowded and it's tight quarters, especially where the media seating is. So in that gym, to kind of paint a picture, along the baseline, each baseline, that's where the media section is. Now, to the right and to the left of that is where the teams come out from their little tunnel area where it's a makeshift locker room. So that's also kind of the gathering place for current NBA people right there in that corner because they come in the back way. You're not going to have Darius Garland, Evan Mobley come in the main entrance where all of the fans come in or where all the media members do. So they take the elevator up. They kind of just crowd in that corner. They congregate there. They have conversations amongst each other. They have conversations amongst players on other teams that are also there. So it's just kind of a gathering spot of NBA people. But it's not where they want the media to be. They want the media to be in that section right next to it along the baseline. But look, part of the reason why you're there at Summer League is because you want to talk to Kenny Atkinson if you're me. Right? You want to talk to Johnny Bryant if you're me. You want to talk to Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen and George Niang and Max Strus and all of these other current NBA players that you don't have the same access to. If I want to talk to Jaylen Tyson, I could theoretically just go to one of the Cavs practices, right? I don't need to use that platform. I want to have conversations with all these guys. And after a game, sure, I'm going to talk to Jaylen Tyson. I'm going to talk to Amani Bates. I'm going to talk to Luke Travers. I'm going to talk to all these different guys, right? But if you have a rare opportunity to talk to a current player from the Cavs at this point, when you don't usually have access to them, you try and jump at that opportunity. Because part of it is the game's going on, and because you want to chronicle that. But one of my mentors a long time ago said, think about what is happening at Summer League and what's important while you're at Summer League. And sometimes it's the game because there's like a really good story there, but sometimes it's the players that are sitting courtside that you therefore have access to. So it's my final game that I'm attending in Las Vegas. I know that I'm going home the next day, and it was very, very strict with security protocols. And I asked a couple of different players if they were willing to have an interview with me beforehand, in the first couple of days when we were at Vegas. And we had not lengthy interactions, but just, hey, how's it going? How's your summer going? How's the family? All that kind of stuff. Just cordial, hey, good to see you sort of thing. Didn't expect you to be here sort of thing. So I had those conversations with every member of the Cavs, including the coaching staff that was there in Las Vegas. But a couple of them I pulled aside and said, hey, are you up for a 5 to 10 minute on the record interview? And, Jarrett Allen did not want to do it. He also turned down an opportunity to go on NBA TV. So he didn't want to do that either. So I was very, very respectful of those guys and their time. But I was also there to do a job, right? I'm very close with Darius. It's my last day there. And I just decided to go in the corner. I was like, you know what? I'm going to abandon my seat. I'm going to go to the corner where everybody is gathering. I'm just going to take my chances. What's the worst thing that Darius says? Go away. What's the worst thing that security does? Grab me and tell me to go back to my seat? Okay, that happened the first day that I was there when I was like taking pictures and talking to people. So I can handle that. So it's shortly before the game ends, the second game that the Cavs played at Summer League. It's shortly before the game ends. And I see Darius kind of interacting with some fans, and then he kind of darts toward that corner where that elevator is. It's him, it's Ty Jerome, and it's Evan Mobley. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to try. Just going to see what happens. So I say, Darius, do you have an opportunity for a quick chat? And he says, ask Ty Jerome. I'm on Ty's time. I said, Ty, I'm talking to Darius for a couple minutes. I hope you don't mind. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever. So I pull out my recorder and I talk to Darius, and we talk about Kenny Atkinson and his interactions with him. We talk about the dinner that Darius had with Kenny on Friday night in Las Vegas. We talk about Donovan's extension. And obviously the primary reason why I wanted to talk to Darius was about all of the trade rumors and the speculation shortly after the Eastern Conference semifinals lost to Boston about if Donovan signs a long-term extension, Darius's reps are going to go to the Cavs and they're going to ask for the Cavs to look for a better situation for Darius, ask for an opportunity to trade him elsewhere. So I just asked him, I said, do you want to be, there are all these rumors out there. Your name has been linked to New Orleans and Minnesota and San Antonio. And I brought up all those different teams. And I brought up what Rich Paul said in an on-the-record conversation with Chris Haynes, one of my old mentors from Bleacher Report. And I just said, do you want to be traded? And then as I asked that question, I feel a tug on my arm. And I'm like, what is going, was that Rich Paul? was that somebody else in the Darius Garland camp? Like, what just happened? It was the main security guy from Summer League who had yelled at me a few different times. He was like, look, wrap it up. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, the question that I just asked was the question that I need a response to. So, of course, being me, I decided to ask the question again, and I carried on with the conversation and the interview for as long until security physically grabbed me and ushered me toward a different direction. And I said, okay, Darius, guess we got to go. Nice talking to you. Appreciate the time. And Darius was like, yo, they're a little aggressive here, huh? And a couple of times we kind of like walked closer and closer to the media section so that it wouldn't be as crowded in the one section. And then finally they just had enough of me talking to Darius. And even Darius was like, he's good. He's good. Like, it's fine. He's with me. But they had enough of me talking to Darius in that little corner area. And so I only got like 3 to 5 minutes with him or something along those lines before security accosted me, basically. Let's put it that way. And I totally understand, because I talked to somebody with the NBA who was very, very good to me while I was out there in Vegas. And he said, hey, like earlier this morning, this corner where everybody gathers, this was a topic of conversation between us and security about how we had to go about things a different kind of way, because the next team that is playing after the Cavs game, that's where that team comes up. So it was just like a mass of humanity, and then me, and I was the only one who didn't technically have the badge and the credential to be in that particular area. But Darius agreed to it, and I had an opportunity to talk to him, even though security was not a fan of mine. Like, I got yelled at by security. Oh my God. 20 times? I was at the arena twice. I went to 2 Cavs Summer League games, and I got yelled at by different security members 20 different times, I think, for standing in places where I wasn't supposed to stand, or talking to people who apparently they didn't think I should have been talking to. But all in all, it turned out to be a good trip, and I had a good conversation with Jarrett Allen. I had a good conversation with Darius. I had a brief good conversation with George Niang. Got to interact with Evan Mobley a little bit. So it was good just to see all those guys and be around. It was the center of the basketball universe for this past week. So it was good to be there.
So you just being your rebel self, obviously, and doing what you're not supposed to. But ultimately, what was the answer that Darius Garland gave you to your question that you needed to have answered?
Yeah. He said, quote, "I don't want to be traded. Those are just rumors." So,
and that's that.
That was that.
Plain and simple. That isn't that what we've been talking about since before, since when the report came out. It was not Darius, it was his representation.
Right.
And sometimes, and even Rich Paul said it when it came to the Bronny James situation. Sometimes I have to do what's best for my client, even if that's not what they want. Like, so that is a situation where we've talked about with Darius Garland, and understanding that he is a guy that has his own words, has his own perspective, has his own ideas, and that was the clarification that not only Chris got for Cavs fandom, but maybe for his representation, because maybe wires and lines were getting crossed and the communication wasn't clean or whatever. But Darius Garland wants to stay. Now we're getting to the point where it's like, well, it's not really your choice anymore. It depends on what the Cavs want to do. But it really does seem like, and we've been talking about it since the beginning, since the offseason began, since the trade market opened up and free agency, all of that. Feels like the Cavs are going to keep the core 4 intact. Seems like they want to run it back with the core 4 in the third year of the Donovan Mitchell experience, as Kobe Altman would put it. So, Chris, don't want to hold you too long. What do you think was the biggest takeaway outside of the Darius Garland conversation that you had this past week in Vegas, getting to talk to Kenny Atkinson, Evan Mobley? Maybe we leave Jarrett Allen out of it till he wants to go on the record.
Well, he didn't want to go on the record, but I did talk to somebody close to Jarrett who said that it took about 3 weeks following the Cavs' loss against Boston for his rib to fully heal. So that just goes to show you the kind of severity of that injury, and why it wasn't all that realistic or logical for him to return in either that Orlando series or that Boston series, because he was still dealing with significant pain weeks after that series concluded. So imagine trying to play a physical Eastern Conference semifinal playoff basketball game. That would have been really, really tough. So that's what somebody close to Jarrett told me. And I thought that was pretty eye-opening with how long it took his rib to heal. But he's in good spirits now. He's a smiley, jovial self, which is really, really nice to see. The other thing that stood out to me is, Jaylen Tyson, I don't think he did anything that really stood out at Summer League, right? But he just looked the part. He looked like a guy who, if there isn't a situation or a position that the Cavs could put him in that would probably be too much for him. There's maturity there, there's seasoning there, and his game has seasoning to it too, right? He does have more of an NBA ready game. And I think for the 20th overall pick, to get somebody who can do a little bit on offense, who can do a little bit of playmaking, a little bit of scoring, who can rebound for his position. He was getting in the passing lanes and he was defending well, and I totally understand. It's Summer League. The level of competition that is there in Vegas is not what it's going to be when he gets to Cleveland training camp, or even when he gets to the preseason in the NBA, or gets to the regular season. But he just looked the part of somebody who maybe possibly could help in year one. This isn't like the Imani Bates developmental type player, right? This isn't the Bronny James developmental type player. This isn't the 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid who is probably going to spend a majority of their first season in the G League. This guy, first of all, he has a great story, and I'm going to dig into that in a feature that I've got coming for cleveland.com. And he's got a great personality, and his trainer said he's irrationally confident. And he meant that in the nicest way possible and in a very, very good way. I actually brought that up to Jaylen, and he had a really, really funny response about that. He was like, first, what does that mean? I want to make sure that I respond to this correctly. And I told him what it meant, and he was like, I wouldn't say it's irrational. He was like, I would just say that I'm just confident, and I have a reason to be confident, which was such a good response. But he just looked like a guy who could potentially help this team in year one because of his level of game readiness. And that doesn't mean he's ready to go out there and score 20 points in an NBA game consistently. And it doesn't mean that he's ready to go out there and be in the starting lineup or be in the top 8 of their rotation. But I think he's going to make it hard on this coaching staff to keep him off the floor and keep him out of the rotation, because it does feel like there's a level of readiness, NBA readiness, to his game.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, when you look at the box score, even without watching the game, you're like, oh, wow, everything he got involved in. And it, like, we've gone through this a couple of times. You don't want to compare Jaylen Tyson to Craig Porter Jr. because that puts unrealistic expectations on him. But Craig Porter Jr. was a guy at Wichita State that was known for getting everything on the ball, on the stat sheet filled up. He led the entire team in almost every statistical category. Jaylen Tyson was kind of the same way. He was the scoring aspect. He was the assist facilitator, being able to get people involved in those kinds of things. And then he's growing his rebounding game. Obviously, you know that him being 6'6", 6'7" with shoes on, he can be a 2-3 that can slide in and help out. Also, you understand that he's been working with Craig Porter Jr. in the backcourt and how that can kind of just be pictured in a lineup with somebody like Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell, just on as like a running mate for a certain period of time. It doesn't have to be a long stretch or anything to that sort. But you also know how fun this guy is as a personality, as a person, and how he meshes into the organization, into this group. And Chris, you said it at an abundance. When you're drafting a player, you're not drafting just the numbers and the stats that come with it. You're drafting the person, right? And Jaylen Tyson is
Mm-hmm.
a guy that kind of reminds me of Keon Coleman, the guy from the Buffalo Bills, who gets into different conversations, has a lot of fun, but is about the business and about getting the work done. And I'm going to end the
Yeah.
podcast on this, Chris. The last thing that I want to touch on, Jarrett Allen got his yearly haircut. And it is a lot shorter than I am used to seeing his hair. Even after he got his haircut during the season last year, this is definitely probably the shortest I've ever seen it. I like the poofy fro, but sometimes to keep it healthy, you got to cut it down to bring it back up. I understand. But hey, Jarrett. Hey, Jarrett, you do your thing, big man.
And I've had a conversation with him about this a few different times. I'm trying to remember now. I think he does it twice. Once during All-Star break, and then once when the season ends and he goes back home. So when he goes back home, that's when, because he's got to have a barber he can trust. I mean, you're not going to trust that with just anybody. It's not like me, who everybody in the universe can do this, right? My hairstyle is not creative. It's not innovative. It's not tricky. If you're a barber and you can't do what I ask for, then you got problems, right? So I'm willing to trust a bunch of different people with my hair because it's not that special to me, and I totally understand that. But Jarrett's hair is very, very special. You're not just going to trust that to anybody. So it's during All-Star break, and I think it's during the offseason. I don't think he gets it again before going to training camp, but maybe he does. Maybe one more right before training camp, and it makes it 3 times a year. Either way, yes, he did look very different, and I did say something about his hair to him. Also, by the way, in terms of Jaylen Tyson, because you brought up comparisons, totally understand that comparisons, none of them are perfect, right? But I always think it's interesting to ask as many people, as many smart NBA people as possible for a Jaylen Tyson comparison. There were 2 that came up most frequently when I asked either scouts, agents, executives, or trainers. The 2 that came up most frequently for Jaylen Tyson, and I want to know what you think about these. One of them was Caleb Martin. The other one was Josh Hart.
So, Chris, I've been saying this. I've been saying this since we did the pre-draft article on him, and I was reading different things, and he had said himself that he wanted to model his game after Caleb Martin and Josh Hart. So we've been talking about this. Who do I think he models most after? I would have to go with Josh Hart because he gets into the 50-50 balls. He's gritty. He's tenacious. And then he has more of an interior game than he does an outside game. And I think Caleb Martin is more known for having a better shot. But, I think he's just, if you could get the best of both worlds, you just mesh the 2 together. But he definitely, Caleb Martin and Josh Hart are 2 good comparisons, and I think he'd be happy with that because when I asked him in the introductory press conference for him, I was like, "You've been said this, Caleb Martin and Josh Hart. Why do you want to be that? What can people expect?" And he said, "A winner and somebody that's going to get after it every day." And that you can't ask for much more out of a rookie that's the 20th overall pick and things of that nature. It's just like, so much goes into the expectation of being a first round draft pick, but also coming into a team that is ready to win now and trying to get your footing and trying to prove that you can play at that level fresh out of college. So I think it's interesting, and I definitely think Jaylen Tyson is a guy to keep your eyes on.
What's really funny too about Jaylen, because you mentioned his outside shot. That's something that him and I talked about. I sat down with him following the Cavs practice at a nearby high school for a big feature that I'm working on when it comes to Jaylen Tyson. And I've talked to a lot of people in his circle just about him, what makes him tick, the journey that he took to become a first round pick. It's not the journey that everybody takes, right? One of the things that he told me, Ethan, is that he didn't do anything in high school except for make shots and shoot threes. He, to use his own phrase, I shot the bleep out of the ball in high school. And I said, well, wait a minute. Like that is not at all what you are known for here. People talk about your playmaking. People talk about your 3-level scoring. People talk about your attacking and driving to the basket and all that kind of stuff. Nobody's talking about you as a sharpshooter. Nobody's talking about you as somebody who's just going to bang 40% from 3-point range. He said, Chris, that's all I did in high school. He said, I wasn't dribbling. I wasn't driving. I wasn't passing to anybody. Early on in my high school career, all I did was shoot the bleep out of the ball. And I said, well, that's interesting. Because, like, if you still have that aspect of your game, if that's still there somewhere, if that can translate that kind of way to the NBA level, and obviously his game has evolved and he grew a little bit more. He got more physical. He got stronger. So his game is more predicated on drives and mid-range type stuff and the in-between and the herky-jerkiness and all that kind of stuff. Because he had to evolve as a player. He felt like he had to evolve as a player, and he's a playmaker. He can pass, all that kind of stuff. But like, if that basic 3-point stuff that's what he was known for early on in his high school career, like if that is there still, and he shot 40% at Texas Tech, small volume, small sample size, but like if that's still there and that can translate to the NBA level, and he becomes that kind of threat or something close to that kind of threat on the perimeter, then that just opens up everything for his driving game, his driving kick game. That just opens up things for the Cavs offense potentially down the road. You know what I mean? So I just thought it was really, really fascinating that one of the things that was a perceived knock against him when he came into the draft was his shot, his shooting form, and his percentages. For him to say, like, I was a great shooter back in high school, and that's all I did back in high school, I never would have thought that.
And that will make it even tougher on these Cavs coaches to hold him on the bench if he brings that to this next level, because this is a guy who you've seen a lot from already. He hasn't done nothing too spectacular, but that's what I've always said. This is kind of like a little mantra that I've lived by. You do the routine things, you don't have to get noticed, but then when you make the spectacular play when it's not expected, then people are like, he does the basic things, the fundamentals to a T, and then he can still make the highlight play when necessary. That's something to look forward to. But I want to end on this, and I'm serious this time. Jarrett Allen, you mentioned Jarrett Allen going to get his hair cut at just like maybe 1-2 spots that he trusts. Dog, I've been waiting for my barber and my hairstylist to open up again since I got back to Cleveland from Boston, dog. Like I've gone to 2 different places to get my hair retwisted, and one person has cut my hair since I've been in Cleveland for the last 10 months. And when we were going to the Eastern Conference semifinals, I tried to go to my regular hair braider, and she was unavailable. And I was like, all right, well, I can't go to Boston looking like this, so I got to go to somebody. I went to this other person. I did not like the end result, and I was like, I am going to one person. That is it. That is the end of the story. And they have been booked for the last 2 months. And I have a conference coming up that I have to go to at the end of the month. Yeah, at the end of the month. And I was like, I'm gonna call in a favor or something. I need to get in before this date, before I get in the car to go to Chicago. And she was like, I think I can make something work. I was like, and make sure your buddy that cut my hair is ready too, because I'm gonna need a cut. I was like, oh my goodness, man, this is going to be a wreck if this. I was like, oh, because you book online, and I was looking at the schedule, and I was like, if I can't get in before this date, there's going to be such a problem. But enough about my hair problems and hair struggles. Thank God Jarrett Allen has somebody that he can go to in multiple cities. I'm just trying to find mine. If you guys have recommendations for hair to get my hair redone, let me know, because I might need them. But with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and me by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.